Williams, and I am a principal on the responsible technology team at Omidyar Network. I help build communities, especially those that are full of entrepreneurs and leaders that are trying to build a tech ecosystem that is grounded in values of responsible innovation. And one fun thing about me is that in a previous life, I was an opera singer.
If pay me in equity was a person, it would look like Leisha Bell. The queen of deal flow and dishing venture dollars is known in part for the brains behind the $535 million PayPal fund that was generously distributed to the Black and Brown owned businesses subsequent to the George Floyd hearings. Her extensive background as a capital allocator, aka Tech Money Spenderella, includes Pipeline Angels, BLXVC, Black Girl Ventures, Pharrell's Black Ambition Fund, and Women of Color Capital Collective. And that's just a snippet of what she brings to her current role as a change maker for PayPal Ventures. Leisha Bell is the co-founder of BLXVC, an angel syndicate of moms mobilizing money for Black and Brown women entrepreneurs. She is the prior deal flow lead for Pipeline Angels, a network of women and femmes. And currently, she leads the Economic Opportunity Fund at PayPal Ventures. For more details, go to www.leishabell.com.
Hello, welcome to another episode with Sister Adventures. And then you smell like me. I love it. I like the gum smell.
Yes, so much gums.
So much gum. I have to say, it's me too. It's what we do. I love it. Aniyia Williams is on the show. I'm so excited to have you. I know we've been running in across circles, around circles, through circles, and you've been popping up. And I was like, I've got to get you on the show because you have such a fascinating experience and you've worn so many hats in this game. And are you still in San Francisco? I feel like, and you're like a city girl, which makes you even more like, we have to know you. We have to know you.
Yes. In San Francisco proper, in recording this from my house in Bayview.
Oh my gosh. That's a gem. That's a rare gem. So why don't you back us into your origin story? Where you're from, who are your people, who made you who you are today?
Yes. Okay, so some of the quick and dirty is that I grew up in Philadelphia. I grew up in a family business. My family used to own a cosmetology school and a couple hair salons, and so from really the age of, I don't know, 3, 5, I was very much conditioned and cultivated in the world and the land of business. I like to joke that with my family, especially with my grandmother and my father, business is our love language. And so there's just a lot of things that have been around me that have come in handy in what has been my journey. But I was also just very drawn to music and the arts from an early age. So for my earlier parts of my life, literally through college, I went to the Creative and Performing Arts High School in Philly studying voice. I got my degree from Penn State in music, but I also minored in business and Italian because those were the Italian part was because I used to sing opera, but also the business part because that was the thing that I did to make my dad happy, that I promise I will also have some other area of experience that will hopefully make me money. And after college, went into nonprofit fundraising. I was really lucky with some internships that I scored when I was in college. And my first job was working at Wolf Trap Foundation in DC. I moved to DC after college and worked on their major gifts team, which ended up being very useful to me also later because it was really a good entry point into just the nonprofit world, but also into high net worth sort of folks that were giving sizable gifts to the organization, and what it meant to really try to cultivate and build relationships with people who were really passionate about a mission and wanted to be able to invest in it. And then I met a guy in DC who is now my husband. This is 15 plus years ago. But after we dated for a few years, he's a software engineer. He got recruited to work at a startup in San Francisco, and we decided to just like be young, crazy people who were going to move across the country 3,000 miles away from everyone we knew and see what this like tech scene was about in SF. And that was actually where the pivot happened, where I started to work in the tech industry.
So did you know about the tech industry? Were you exposed to it? Like, or you just got to these streets of Silicon Valley?
It's like, right. Because it's like, where does the tech come in? So funny enough, my first real, I would say, exposure to the tech industry was when I went to South by Southwest for the very first time with Marco. His company was doing like a sponsored activation there. And I got to tag along, and I was just like, whoa, what is this world? And like, how do I find a place in it? Like, I remember having that thought, and I'm just like, I have got to figure out where my piece of this is. My first time going to South by Southwest was this huge eye-opening experience that I got to tag along with Marco. His company at the time was like sponsoring something. And I was just like, what is this tech world? And like, how do I find a place in it? It just seems so exciting. And like, people were just scrappy and making shit up. And I was like, I could do that. And I'm just like, but where does a singer / nonprofit fundraiser fit into this? And what ended up happening was when we moved to San Francisco, the first thing that I sort of set to do, and this is something that a lot of people learn very quickly about me, is that I'm a very hyper social person. And there was no way I was going to move to a new city that I didn't really know and not like make it a job to like go meet people and make friends. So I like joined a bunch of meetup groups. I was just out here in these streets, like trying to meet women, especially Black women that were in the Bay, trying to meet folks that were in tech. And like some of those connections came through folks that Marco was working with at his company. And I ended up there was a random opportunity, like one of the significant others of the engineer he worked with was like, oh, this company that I'm working at, they're hiring a part-time office manager. And I was just like, I'm way overqualified for this job. And also I would love this job because I'm like, I just want to get my foot in the door. This company sounds cool. Yeah. Who knows where it's going to go from there. So I did that. My first role in tech was like a part-time office manager at this company called Voxer that makes this walkie-talkie app for smartphones. And it was a really cool, fun place and job. I'm like, they're going to pay me like $25 an hour to like plan happy hours for the engineers and keep the fridge stocked. Like easy. I'm going to just do my little Etsy business on the side. It's going to be great. And actually what ended up happening was I was there for maybe 3 months, and then the app went viral. Like I remember it was like a Thanksgiving weekend, and some like basketball player or rapper or something like tweeted about it or something like that. And then everybody, like the servers started melting. Like we got like millions and millions and millions and millions of people started to download and use this app all at once. And I came back from that weekend, from that holiday weekend, and like literally they just like handed me some papers and they were like, here's your full-time job officer to be community manager of like all of this stuff that's happening. And I was just like, oh, okay. And then from there, I just made my way through the organization. I, worked on their business development team when they started to make a business product. I worked on the marketing team doing some content marketing for a while. And then eventually I ended up becoming the head of marketing for a bit. And I was there, I would say all in for about maybe 3.5 years, kind of like making my way onto the leadership team there. But once I got to that point, I also kind of started to realize like, oh, this is what's happening in the room. Like, this is how they're making the sausage. And I'm like, I'm not as impressed as I would like to be. And I feel like there's something more that I could be doing than this. But I'm really grateful for being able to cut my teeth there. And also just, the CEO, like Tom Cadis, ended up being my first investor in the next thing that I did, which was like, I also just kind of had this idea for something I wanted to buy, but I couldn't find it anywhere on the internet. And I was like, I want headphones, but I want them to look like jewelry. And I was like, this has to be a thing. And it just was not a thing. And then I started to think like, maybe I could make this a thing, which is a pattern for me of having these crazy ideas and being like, maybe I could just make that. And then that set me on this adventure, which was called Tinsel. Went to Tom and told him about my idea and just asked him for like any connections he might have to like hook me up with people. He introduced me to a friend of his that was an industrial designer, and I talked to him about like this idea and how to get it made and how to manufacture stuff. And he decided to take me under his wing. And also he was just like, you're going to need a lot of money to do this. Like making physical like hardware is hard and it's expensive. And, at the time, Tom was also angel investing. He was like, you need to go back and ask Tom for some money. And so he actually decided to fund me and was like, I'll take a bet on you. If anybody's going to make this a thing, you're going to make this a thing. And I was just like, cool, I'm going to like quit working for you. I'm going to start this company and you're going to own part of it. And we're going to make electronic jewelry for women.
Yes. So I saw one of your pitches.
Yeah, you did?
I did, yeah. It was at Lisa Lambert's event. It was like in San Jose. And I was like, look at that making beautiful jewelry with this audio component. And
my heart, Leisha, I didn't know this.
Yeah, I was like, that's so cool. Yeah, so yeah, I've been around a long time, but yeah, yes. It was so great to see that. Tell the people what Tinsel was about. Like, it was so fabulous. It's a fabulous idea.
Yeah, I agree. I still like have a little part of me that wants it to come back one day. So like, the company has been sunset for the last 5 years, but it's basically a necklace that transforms into headphones. It's sort of like a statement jewelry piece that looks just like jewelry, but it hides the headphones inside of the pendant of the necklace. And I got a patent for it. Like, it was really one of my greatest achievements in some ways, especially given that I knew absolutely nothing about designing and making physical products or manufacturing products. We manufactured it in China. Got to go to China a couple times to like, see them put it together. I had a co-founder who mostly managed the production stuff, but it was like really a wild journey. It was a wild, wild journey, but I would say that it was so rewarding. I came away my first trip to China. I was just like, oh my God, I could make anything. And then just like that feeling of empowerment of just like literally anything I can imagine, there is a factory on this planet that can make it a real thing. And that was like really cool. The other thing was, what made it, and there were just all kinds of challenges we had to deal with making the product. But I'd say the thing that was actually like the hardest was fundraising, which, circa 2014, 2015, out here in these sandhill streets, like trying to shake my little tin pan. And, I just feel like first of all, the investor set has diversified quite a bit in the past 10 years, even though it's still not diverse enough, to be clear. Right. But like, so I was primarily pitching like, somewhat middle-aged white men, that were not customers of this product and like really had no way of trying to evaluate like I would get so many guys that were just like, I'm gonna ask my daughter or my wife what they think about this, and I'm just kind of like, okay, that's your market research, got it. But it was like a new market. This was in the heyday of just like Fitbits and other kind of like wearables were kind of coming on. But I was like, this is the thing. I'm like, people don't like to fund hardware. I get it. It's a rough business. You've got to get to the economies of scale. And honestly, venture capital is really expensive capital to take to like do production, but it's also like as a startup, which you have access to. I think that there was also these elements of just, the bias is real. Like there just wasn't a lot of women and people of color that were getting funding for anything, let alone for hardware. So there were all these different like things we had going against it. Oh yeah, and I got pregnant while I was building the company. That was not a part of the original plan, but pitching while pregnant also adds another layer of unsureness for the investor set. So, or at least it did then. I don't know, maybe is in vogue now, but before it was not cute. So like, Anyway, we did not end up getting, like, we did a successful crowdfunding campaign. We did get the product made, clearly, as you could see. It did ship. We got to do a couple production runs. And then we just, like, we ran out of cash and we were not able to get to the economies of scale to, like, actually make it viable. But, like, we only had raised, like, a little bit less than $500,000 the entire time. Most of that came from my original angel, Tom, who believed in me, and I'm still grateful for having given me the opportunity to fail even. And Arlen at Backstage Capital, who, like, was an early believer and has always been one of my greatest champions out here. And I will always love Arlen for that too.
That's great. That's great. I love that. So you put your baby to sleep.
Yes.
And not you had two babies.
I had two babies, two startups at one time.
The same time. And so now you're on the other side. So now you're an investor. So we'd love to learn about kind of that transition.
That transition happened. Yes.
Yes.
So one of the things about Tinsel is that it set me on this mission, like what I learned and what I experienced from building it, where I ended up I started two other things. I replaced that for two other babies. One, listen, I keep starting companies. No, but like Black and Brown Founders, which was really about what I started to know and understand about like Black and Latino folks that were out here building and innovating and not really getting checks cut. And it was sort of like, there were a lot of folks that were like, oh, we're going to teach you how to like pitch for investment capital. But there really wasn't a sort of, how do you do this if you never saw $1 of investment money? And that was the orientation that Black and Brown Founders took, because we're like, honestly, statistically, most of you are not. So how do you get from idea to launching and making your first dollars when you're working with modest resources? And that has always been sort of the orientation that the organization has had towards just educating people, doing events where we just try to give people really actionable talks by people who just like found really scrappy and creative ways to build stuff from scratch, or that just could try to help you understand, like, even if you can't afford to hire a finance person to keep your books, like, here's how you need to make sure that you got your ish in order. Like, here's how you need to think about managing your funding. And so there's like that type of stuff. And then Zebras Unite, which was the other one. And that was like agnostic to the sort of background of who it was in terms of who we were really speaking to. But Zebras has a global community of people, like chapters all across the world. And that was really about, we need to have more options for funding startups than venture capital. Like VC is good for like this very, very sort of narrow set of outcomes. But there's so much more participation and so many more outcomes and so many more successful businesses that in any other industry would be like wonderful. But here it's like, yeah, okay, $30 million is cute, but I need you to make $300 million a year. And I'm just like, I think there's a lot of really wonderful, viable businesses in that mid-market range, but we don't have the capital that's purposed for that in this industry. So pushing for that capital stack to expand is really where Zebra sort of sat. And that just generally people wanting to build more ethical and sustainable startups, which was associated with that, was really the thing that attracted people. And now it's a whole identity that folks have taken on, which really kind of has come to mean, like, if you see that yourself as a Zebra, it's like, I am a founder who also gives a shit about things aside from my financial returns and shareholders, which I think has been great. And so then those babies, I worked on those for a while. And then eventually BIA came into the picture when I teamed up with Kelly and a group of other folks, Kelly Burton, who was running Founders of Color at the time, which was sort of like a cousin to what Black and Brown Founders was doing. I started to really meet other leaders who were building these like entrepreneur support organizations for folks that were trying to build businesses and tech companies. And like, we were having some of the same challenges that the folks we were trying to help were, and we were like, we need to build collective power. And that was how Black Innovation Alliance was born.
And I mean, a testament to what Kelly has built, and I consider a rapid time, right? I mean, just a few years, she's
Speed of
grown
light.
an amazing organization. And I think and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the beauty of her organization, she's like support for support, right? Like she supports the leaders, the builders, right, who are trying to really make ecosystem changes.
Yes, which I actually think is a great transition into like, how did I end up at Omidyar Network, which I like, so BIA, this was 2020 now, where BIA had just launched. And at that time, something ended up in my inbox that was like, forward this to your networks. And it was a job description for a role that ON was hiring. And at the time, it was like we were getting it because we were, Zebras was one of the investments that they had made. And so they were sending it out to their grantees to share. And I was reading it and I'm just like, okay, reading it to see who should I send this to. And I'm like, oh my God, this is like literally me. Like I am this person. But like part of what it was that sort of stuck with me about that job, that role that they were looking for, and what I was doing at the time was clearly people who were building communities, but like doing it sort of in pursuit of certain kinds of goals, like especially like this idea of responsible technology. And
Right.
like, I feel like there is like, to me, responsible technology is lots of things, but some of the things that I think it is first and foremost is like equitable and it is inclusive. And a lot of that was what, at the end of the day, BIA was kind of trying to sort of like fill as a space is like of equity, of participation in the innovation economy, but not necessarily doing that through direct solutions. It was kind of like really operating at a level of systems. And this is also what I love about being at ON is that ON is very focused on systems as well. Cause it's like Black Innovation Alliance is not just an entrepreneur support organization. It's the organization that supports the entrepreneur support organizations. It's the organizations that's trying to understand and rally around like what policy is going to actually make the difference for all of these different kind of like ripple effects for people in the ecosystem, and not just like really focused on one specific set, but how can we start to really organize all of the people that have been this invisible layer of infrastructure for participation of Black folks in the innovation economy, and like provide visibility and bring resources, and also just really be after economic justice in a place that is not like there's so much money, like the richest companies on earth, and also we're still somehow struggling. Like we can innovate and fucking create rocket ships that go to Mars, but we can't somehow create like equality. Like we can't address like diversity as an issue. You know what I mean?
Hello, my name is Zora, and I will be telling you guys about my mom's new merch shop. Go to LishaBell.com. Thank you.
Well, I think we have to kind of give a nod to Omidyar and his connection to PayPal Mafia. And, like essentially these people in the Bay Area build really successful companies and are able to steward their wealth, right, in ways that are meaningful.
Yes, I agree. And one of the things that I have loved also about being at Omidyar Network, like I was very not sure. I'm like, this job sounds exactly like what I want to be doing, but I wasn't really like, I still was, coming off I was like out here in these entrepreneur streets for 7 years before that, like being my own boss for all intents and purposes. And, coming in-house in like a foundation type situation was still, it was like, I don't know, these things move slow, all these rules and policies and all these things that, I'm used to just like cut and run. And so like, but I think I've come to really appreciate now actually like really understanding how it works, and of just even looking at other kinds of philanthropies. I think that there's just like a really sort of elegant way that the Omidyars have designed the sort of structures that actually really allow people like myself, which I think even, and a lot of this is also a testament to the leadership at Omidyar Network and specifically, but like really starting to reorient the work that they had done before to systems change and, you know, being able to impact and create leverage in systems, like in the spirit of like equity and inclusion and other things like responsibility, reimagining capitalism, building cultures of belonging. But like bringing in folks who had been doing the work to lead that, where I think a lot of things that were like, it was a transformation from hiring people that have just been lifelong program officers in different things, which is not to say anything bad about those folks, but I do think that there's very clearly a very specific type of lens and effectiveness that I bring to what I'm running at ON because I used to be one of them. Like I understand how to, or at least I have learned how to like translate what that pain is that people are experiencing and what they're identifying in the problem space to like, oh, here's actually a thing that philanthropy can do. And a lot of the times it's like stuff that hasn't been tried before. So I kind of have developed a little bit of a reputation internally for like breaking our systems all the time. But, you know, it pushes the organization and it helps us grow. And I think that on the other side of all the pain of the breaking, the putting back together has always like really, I think, helped everybody become stronger. So that's a really rewarding part of my job that is also really hard.
Yeah, I think it's difficult. I mean, even in my role, you know, like George Floyd had to die so that I could have the space to lead economic opportunity, right? I think about those sacrifices, and I appreciate that I have the seat and entrusted to have the seat and have a hand in community and a voice in community and be with community. I think that's an amazing privilege that someone greatly sacrificed for me to have.
That's true.
You know, and I love what you do because, you know, you very kindred and ecosystem building. Like everything you build is like ecosystem, right? And like if we don't fix the kind of systemic things, then we'll stay fighting. And so I love that your commitment. And let's talk a little bit about angel investing. So have you dabbled? What's the story from family to like?
I feel like I'm like I'm a baby angel investor. Like I'm still with my diaper on kind of like phase. I have only made one angel investment so far. And I should also say, like, you know, just so people have context, my the salary at ON is not half bad, but it's not necessarily like, oh, we're gonna make you into an angel investor. Like I give someone else's money away as my job, but there have been some successes that have come to myself and my husband, to Marco and I. The first company that brought him out that he like worked at had an exit. They got acquired by Microsoft. There was some money that we got from that. The second startup he went to and worked also had a SPAC exit, which also kind of brought us like a little windfall of money. So there were some successful things through my husband's career as a software engineer that allowed us to be able to buy a house in San Francisco, for instance, and really build on that. And we really, even before we moved to San Francisco, have always been very mindful about trying to build towards like financial goals, and even have like been thinking, like in our late 30s and early 40s about, you know, retirement and like, how do we work to that? That's like the dream is like, oh, I don't have to work if I don't want to work. What does it mean to get there? So we've been sort of implementing these different steps and plans. A lot of it we've had to learn like as we go along. There's a whole much to say about that. But I'm like, angel investing is like the new thing that I'm like, we know, obviously we've known, I've taken money from angel investors to build my own companies, but like putting myself in the seat, for some reason, I feel like I had to like, I don't know, warm up to it in a way.
You've done all kinds of risky things. And now you gotta warm up.
I know, isn't it crazy? I don't know what that is, that psychological like little hurdle of just, okay, but like, am I gonna do this? Is this the thing I'm gonna do? I don't know why it feels so easy to just like, yeah, mutual fund on the stock exchange, like throw it over there. And like the angel investment stuff, because I'm like, also, I know so many founders that I'm like so excited about what they're doing. And so I'm like, in some ways I definitely have access to like really amazing deal flow just by being in the Bay Area and like, I don't know, showing up at a place like the Battery and all these things. You just meet people.
Right.
And I'm in proximity to all these great opportunities. So I'm like, this is something I have to build up. I think honestly, I just need like an emotional support like group. Yes, bring me.
They have one. It's called BLXVC. But yes, we need you. Number one, you have amazing operational experience, amazing investor experience, and you could catapult a founder's life just with your knowledge and expertise and ownership, right? So I'm doing an altar call. I know you have some deals. I got some deals. We got to put you on some more cap tables. I tell people it's like going to church. It's like they only ask for like 5 oranges out of 100. We just want one. We just like want one little allocation. Just this is the angel bucket, and we're not going to overthink it. Right. And we're going to take risk. We might win it all. We might lose it all, but we supported an amazing founder like Tom did, like we want to support amazing people and amazing ideas that otherwise would not come to market. So that's what we on work on it.
I'm down. I'm with it. I believe.
You heard it here first. Sisters with Ventures recruited.
Yes.
But you're already doing the work and amazing things. And we always like to close the show with, what would you tell your younger self?
Ooh, what would I tell my younger self? It would be probably to not put so much pressure on myself. I think, what's that expression that pressure makes diamonds, which is such a clever like reframe of what is very possibly very unhealthy habit. But I think that like I would say I'm a recovering perfectionist in many ways.
Yep.
And like that pressure on myself would just be like really holding myself to a very high standard. And I think I do still hold myself to somewhat of a high standard, but I've just gotten much more okay with failing and dropping the ball, honestly, because I'm just like, I'm a human that already does way more than a normal human does, and I just need to give myself some grace. So I think maybe starting on that journey a little bit earlier might have prevented some extra painful moments in my life. But how else do you get there? You get there eventually.
Right. In the good enough category. Good enough. Is there any way that you want our listeners to follow you, support your work?
Yeah. Gosh. I would say I'm like, follow me. I feel like I'm a social media refugee right now. I guess I'm kind of on Instagram, but like, am I really? But I'm Opera Queenie with an IE at the end on socials. And we are going to be launching a website soon for the project that I'm leading at ON. If anything, follow that. Follow the tech we want. Like that is where my energy is going. Most of it. I still have a couple little babies I'm taking care of, but like most of my energy is going into tech we want. I'm very excited about what this community is doing. This is the ON project. It is about building an alternative tech ecosystem that is rooted in values of inclusivity and equity and sustainability and mutualism, and just really rethinking how we work, new models of reciprocity, building infrastructure that can create the conditions for responsible innovation to take place. So I think it's one of the most exciting things. It feels like the culmination of all of this journey that I've been telling you about. And I would encourage people to like check it out. We're going to be launching some content later this year, so keep an eye out.
I love it. Well, thank you for sharing your time and your talent with us. We love to just hear your story and amplify the good work that you're doing in all the places. There's like, we'll have to put in show notes the 10 organizations and startups that Aniyia is involved in. Too many. We'll just put them in the show notes so you guys can support in all your different ways. But thank you so much for your time. Thank you for this episode. We love you.
Love you too.
Hey, It's your girl, Alicia Bell. Thank you for listening to Sisters with Ventures, where we amplify women of color in the venture capital ecosystem. We are on all streaming platforms available: Spotify, iTunes, Amazon, you name it, we're there.
We hope you enjoyed this week's episode of Sisters with Ventures. If so, download and subscribe to the Alive Podcast Network, available on both iOS and Android, and select Sisters with Ventures to support this podcast each and every week.
And that's a wrap. Thank you for listening to the show. Please subscribe, tell a friend, check us out, let the world know. You can find out more information about this podcast at LiciaBell.com. And remember, be an angel, invest.